Hey, happy Wednesday night, all that sort of stuff. Welcome to the carpenter's shop. Really? Got dust here everywhere. Huge mess. Hey, Chirpy, just watched your video. Hey, Dan. I've got a video of yours to watch too, I think. Hey, Adam. I don't know if there's much really to show. Been messing with 3D printer to try and print some numbers to go inside of this pattern. There must be a better way. These are a bit sharp on top and they haven't got enough draft on them. And they're not really smooth enough. I give them a clean up with a little knife maybe. But probably I'm going to do them again. Hey, Roger. The woodwork's still happening. This is a little bit of pattern work. This is how this is looking, which is actually pretty nice. Still needs quite a lot of work, but I've got the standoffs here for the push rod. And all this should mould, I think. It's all got a bit of draft on it. It's all nice. I don't think there's going to be any real serious problems here. There's a bit of taper on here. It's got the mark for the core box here, and there's another core box goes in here, which is the first one we're going to make. And another one goes in here, a core goes in here, which is this shape, and then it's bigger on the inside. So if we have a look, I've marked on the inside of this one sort of how it goes. This one here has a hole in it, which gives us the outside of the cylinder. Hey, John. And this one has a hole right through, or it has a hole right through, which is inside of the cylinder, right through to there. And then it's got a gap in there. If we leave this solid, I think we're going to have some shrinkage problems in here. So I'm just going to put probably an oval shaped hole in here. And then this is cut out here. So there's just a lip around here, and then it's hollow on the inside. Hey, Raymond. It is a massive amount of core sand. You're right, Chirpy. You've really got to get the support out here when we mould it, because there's quite a bit of weight on here. We've got to get the support out here. So that's why I've made these long. Shorter, I think we might have problems with that. They've still got to have these legs finished, and a fair bit of work in that. I haven't fastened these dowels yet, so if you need to put this flat on the bench, we can just push them through, and then we can key them together later. So that's coming together. The first core box is hey, Peter. That's about what it is. These are trying to get the end grain right so they don't fall apart, and the cross grain. But this is a 2-part core box. It's all got to be tapered out to match this, the taper in here. So each half, the sand impression is going to be this shape here. with a taper up on the end and then a taper on this end to match this one, which has got to be like that to come out of the sand. Hey JB, hey Cam. So then it's got, I'm going to put a bit of taper on this hole in the middle so it comes out, and a bigger diameter plug on here and here, and a handle on this end so you can pull it out. And then these should dow together and go like this. And probably this piece is going to drop in on the top with a dow to pack it together. So there's a bit of work in that. It's not just a real easy job, some of those core boxes. It's all a learning curve. Picked these up at Aldi tonight. Thanks, Cam. Thanks for sharing that. Yeah, core boxes are a bit of a challenge. Anyone who's in Australia, these are at Aldi this week. They look like a pretty precision needle file set. They're pretty coarse. They're made in China. They're in a pretty reasonable box. They're quite coarse. They've got a bit of cut in them. Haven't really tried them out. They've got a nice feel to them though. So a set of needle files. The handle's probably not hardly worth having. The thread's a bit crappy. I'm not sure they even fit, to be honest. Not sure about that. Might need to drill through it. But nice set of needle files for $8. And they'll be good because all they're going to do is a bit of body filler on those patterns. I don't want to use my good ones. Picked this up last weekend. I don't know if I showed you that. For under $10, they're excellent. This is a Velvet Edge finest quality razor hone. And it's still reasonably flat. It's fairly soft stone for hard steel. Mark, that's probably about what they're good for actually. It's $8, it's excellent. If you've got hard cracked heels, just the thing. So that was a score for like $1 at a garage sale. And I guess the reason you're all standing here is because I bought a boiler test pump. I'm not sure if I've done the right thing. And I have been messing with it. I unboxed it. But I had plans to make one of these, and I've got one sort of half made, and I messed around with it. This looks a bit more professional. It's certainly a lot less bother. It's got everything it needs. It's got nice big knobs that you can get hold of. The pump's way oversized. Good stuff, Chirpy. And it handles a lot more pressure than any of the boilers I've ever made or ever likely to make will. It goes to 60 bar, 800 and something PSI. It's got a nice powder coated tank. And it's got a tap to lock on the pressure. So you can pump up the pressure. You can lock that on so it doesn't leak back through the pump. And another tap to release pressure. It's just got a plain screwed fitting. I'm going to have to work out what that is and find some fittings for it. It also had a bit of taper in the bottom of these two pins that look like they're probably the ends of pop rivets. Maybe they were just floating around in there and someone decided they'd tape them down. I'm not sure, but to me that's probably what they look like. I don't think they're part of it, to be honest. Chinese stuff's always fun. So the idea, I think, is to put some sort of a manifold on the side here or on the end to hold the boiler, and then screw this in so that we can use that to pump up the pressure. It's pretty direct acting. You can get about 100 psi on the gauge just by blocking this with your finger, and that's about half a pump. So I'm not real sure about how we're going to go cutting the pressure down. Someone here might know, and that's why I'm sort of asking. If we put a 200 psi gauge on this, it's just going to, I think it's probably just going to blow the back out of it. It probably needs some sort of a pressure relief valve on here at 200 psi so that it squirts back into the tank when it gets past that. Does anyone have any clues about that? It seems like a good idea, but this wasn't expensive. It came from China. Just die cast and a few fittings and a powder coated tank. This is all in German, so it looks like it come from Germany, but it's made in China, I would imagine. Yeah, but if you fill the boiler up first, you haven't got a lot of volume. All you've got's the line, really. The only bit that's really changing in volume is from this fitting here to this fitting here, or back to the pump. So yeah, there's not a lot of volume change there. Anyway, there's lots of reasons why you shouldn't do that to a boiler. One is that air is compressive. You don't get a particularly strong mechanical force on anything with air. It's also a little bit dangerous. If something does go, it'll go all of a sudden when the pressure gets up, and then the air is just going to expand, whereas water just runs out. So they're probably the main reasons I think that people don't air test or people prefer to hydraulic or water test boilers. So that's sort of this week's big purchase. We'll see about that. I also put a deposit down on a GoPro, but I'm not supposed to talk about that. There's an embargo on that. I'm not supposed to say that the GoPro 7 may or may not be out day after tomorrow. So if anyone can use that information, well, that's great. But it's not really information. It's sort of anti-information because there's no such information available from anyone. But I have a friend in a camera house, or I have a friend in a camera shop, and they may or may not have given me that information. So when it arrives, it arrives. But it's probably going to be Friday morning. Yep, Cam. Thanks, Dan. That's kind of true. So this is quite a big tank. Hey there. It's got a clip here for the handle, which is awesome. Means I can carry it around. These are just brass screw down valves. I don't know whether they've got a needle seat or whether they're just got a ball that screws down tight. There's a fair bit of force there. If we wanted to put a fire out, it might be just the thing. Yeah. It needs about half a pump, but it's very, very easy, I think, to overstress things. Yeah. So this is just a water tank, which is good because it's not going to go rusty. It's all powder coated, so that's awesome. This this gauge reads to 60 bar, 860 psi, 6 megapascals. Oh, thanks, Cam. I'll go down to NZ probably. Might happen in the morning or it might not. We'll see how we go. But it needs something to drop it down so it's a little bit more. If we look, the amount that I'm going to pressure test this little traction engine board, I don't know if you can see that. We'll turn that off for a bit. On this dial is about there, something like that. It moves from there to there, so it's probably that much. And it's a little bit too fine to be able to control. So I think probably a lower pressure gauge, either out here on the manifold, which wouldn't hurt if we were going to put a manifold on it. A gauge out here would be probably a really smart idea. But I think it needs some sort of a pressure relief valve back in. So that's this week's score. It was $90 and it was delivered like within a week. So rather than mess around, do a fair bit of boiler work, it seems, this might be a really good investment. And probably there are people in a couple of clubs around that would be able to use this as well. The downside is I've got to find somewhere to put it. Yeah, twice working pressure. I think in some instances that's probably excessive. You've got to have a think about where your strain points are in the boiler. Some of these little boilers, like something with their multiple tubes or stays, you would be able to pressure test to sort of double. But something just a simple pot boiler with ends in it, it's going to bulge a bit. Friend picked this up at the market last weekend. There's a Bakelite drill stand. It's got decimal equivalents on it from 1/16. That hole's probably blocked up. I think it might even have a broken drill in it, which should be fun. Through to 27/64, which is just a fraction over 7/16, which is a bit of a strange set. No, it goes through to 1/2 inch. So that's pretty cool. Have to fill it up now. That's probably more of a challenge. I've got some of the drills, but I need to put a shelf up somewhere so I can put all these somewhere. I'd like a metric one that's as good a quality. This is Bakelite. It's, I guess, 40s. says drill stand number 945F. Made in England by Bendix Herbert Limited, London E7. So that was a cool find. Yeah, a smaller ram and cylinder would probably work, but it probably gives you not a lot more advantage, really. I think a pressure relief valve might be the easiest and best way, just to have a ball and a spring to pop some pressure off when it gets up. But hydraulic pumps all have that as a standard in case you have an overload. So it must be a fairly easy thing to find, I think, like Cam says. Yeah, Adam's got a few of these. They are kind of valuable, really. It's a difficult thing being able to organise your drills and know which ones are missing and which ones you haven't packed away and which ones are still out on the drill press or under the drill press and which ones you got to look for when you sweep the floor. So they are pretty useful. That might be a good idea, Raymond. Yeah. Don't know what thread they are or how you got to, whether you can actually unscrew one. In my experience, unscrewing fittings in old hot water cylinders is one of those impossible tasks. But anyway, there might be a new one available off the shelf. I'll go and talk to someone. Playtime. This is coming along really nice. It's a pretty cool little engine. And I think I put part 3 up on YouTube last week. I'm really enjoying this build. It is fun. Yeah, soft solder's fine. I've soft soldered this one, JB. I know where you're coming from. That you got a little Mammoth engine there with a similar thing. This is just soft solder. I just used silver. It's a silver soft solder. Comes in a little flat roll at Bunnings. Now, the last engine I've done, exactly the same design's done probably 30, 40 hours, I reckon. And it's properly run in and it does about 10,000 RPM. It really motors. And that's never even looked like letting go. So soft solder's fine. So part 17, something like that, part 18A and B is on Patreon at the moment and soon to be part 19 and part 20. And as I put them up, I'll put another one up on YouTube too from the series. So it's getting a lot of interest. There's quite a few people contacted me about getting these castings, so it looks like I'm going to have to modify these patterns on the back so that I can actually cast them easily. And this one and this one, they cast pretty well. This is a nice pattern to mold because it's quite thin here and it's got lots of taper on here. This is quite thick and it's got too square a corner, so whether I print another one that's going to be better or whether I stick with what I got or whether I modify the one that I've got, I don't think that's a good idea. So I might be printing another pattern for this before I cast too many more. Got the sheet metal. to make a canopy. Give you some idea what that's going to look like. Chirpy, you do so great to video casting. I have probably a billion things to remember when I'm trying to mold something like this. It takes all the concentration I've got, and I tend to not even think about putting a camera up. Hey, Dale. Good morning. Up and about early. So this has got a double bend on each side. Hey, Machine NZ. And it's got a piece of tin that folds down inside the bend and gives this flexes it around like this to give it a bit of a curve. So that's sort of the next part. We've still got to paint it too, but whether we do paint it, it's probably going to spoil it. But I'll paint the wheels. We might paint the smoke box black. We might paint the canopy and put some letters along the side. So that's coming along. But yeah, if you've got any hassles with what you're doing there, Marcus, JB, let me know or ask me, because it's not a particularly difficult job to solder that together. But pretty cute engine. Really pleased with that. And hopefully I'll get it finished pretty soon. What else? There's no progress on the pantograph, sadly. I'm back working 6 days a week. It just hasn't happened, that's all. Pretty poor sort of a show, but we need to get on to that. That's pretty cool, Chirpy. You do some cool stuff. I'd use this, JB. I'd flux it with this. Just put a bit on with an acid brush and put it together and warm it up. That's about where I'd be. It looks like there's plenty of solder on what you've got. You could tin it a bit more, but I just tin it up. JB's working on a Mammoth locomotive, O-scale locomotive, that's got very similar cylinders and one's missing. I'd just probably flux it up, and I'd warm it up, and I'd probably just touch a bit of solder on it and brush it over, and then I'd cool it off and I'd put the cylinder on it and warm it up again. Yeah, electrical solder will do. You just need to use a lot of it. This is one that Big Block Hardware here, Bunnings sells. This has got a bit of silver in it, I believe. It's food grade. I don't think it's rosin cord, but it's quite a good solder, and I like that. I like it a lot. Awesome, Chirpy. I need to get on, and I've got some bits and pieces laying around. There's going to be some progress done on that one weekend, and then it's going to be about done. So looking forward to that. What else? What else is everyone else doing? Cam's making a slotting attachment. That's pretty cool. Checking that out. Some interesting information there on VFDs. It's really learn a lot from your channel, Cam. I'd like to see a video on making those incredible drawings, actually. What's Dale up to? He's moving. He hasn't dropped anything yet, or managed to launch himself with a pallet jack. Oh, awesome. Machine said, I'd like to see some pictures. Anyone's got a project they're doing, send me some pictures and I'll bang them in the middle of a project video. Bit of light relief. That'd be awesome. Just email them through. Hey, Tommy. I'll check it out. Some people, Adam, don't take the ball bearings apart, or the ball screws apart and lose the ball bearings. That's a bit harsh. I want to see that, JB. We expect that running before Christmas. There we go. Report back next week. Chirpy had an awesome video. There we go, on forging tools. That's really interesting. It's kind of cool if you're interested in that and forging lathe and shaper tools. I learned a lot from that video. Thanks, Chirpy. That was awesome. Machine said, I'm sure I'm subscribed. I wonder why they haven't turned up. I haven't seen anything on my subscription line. That's a bit strange. Steam oil. I don't know, you want something that's not really water soluble, and you want something that's a bit thick and hasn't got too many chemical additives in it. Really got no idea on that one. I wouldn't put 3-in-1 oil in anything, in particular my stowing machine or anything that had to move. 3-in-1 oil is awful. Years ago, as part of an exercise and a course that I was doing, we got a piece of brass, just a piece of brass sheet about this big, and we polished it and divided it up into squares, and we put little standoffs on the corners as a project, and sat a sheet of glass on top of it to keep the dust out, which probably kept some of the dust out. But every time we got new oil, a watch oil or any sort of oil, and put a drop in the middle of each of the squares and label it, just scratch it, and see what happens over time, over the course of the year. And 3-in-1 in about 2 days spreads out and stains the brass and collects dust and looks terrible, and really doesn't do anything for lubrication except make everything greasy. probably the best right over here on this corner would be whale oil, like sperm oil or whale oil, because that stays in a little bubble and stays the same colour for years and years and years. So it's interesting how different oils behave, but 3-in-1 oil I've never really believed in ever since. It's kind of good for, not really, I use it to work for flushing out buttons on watch cases, things like that, that really don't require a whole lot of expensive oil. So not a big fan of 3-in-1 oil. I've got some tallow, Chirpy. Maybe we could make something. Graphite string. That sounds like a really messy thing to do from experience. I've got some graphite string and it's awful stuff. A bit of rolled up PTFE tape's probably better if you stretch it out and just twist it up and use that as a string. The graphite strings, it's not as good because it's not impregnated. It's just on the outside. It's awful stuff actually nowadays. And I don't know how you get the graphite right into the string. I've got some old stuff, and it's like you can break it up and pull strands off it, and it's got graphite all the way through. Whereas the newer stuff, I've bought some newer stuff for something recently, and you pull 2 strands off, and you find that the inside of the strands haven't got any graphite on it. It's only on the outside of the string, so it's meant to be that diameter, the rope. I think that's a Keith Appleton idea. I'm not sure where that came from, but if you get some PTFE tape, like the thick gas tape's probably nice, the yellow gas tape, and twist it up in strands so that it's nice and tight, and then you can use that as a string, and that's probably as good as anything. The other thing you could do is buy silicone O-rings and put on, which are really nice too. That's what I did for my steam locomotive. I think the graphite's the same stuff, but the problem is that it just doesn't seem to be right through the string. Whereas once upon a time, however they used to do it, you used to go right through the string. What's really interesting here, bizarre but interesting, is that we've got a bubble of water there from where that tank was sitting on the bench. You've got to love the Chinese. They can't even make a pressure test tank that doesn't leak. We'll see what happens there. Awesome. Anyway, that's a catch up. I've got to call this a night. Thanks everyone for showing up and turning in. It's really awesome to catch up with everyone. Silicone O-rings are the orange ones, Machine NZ, if you can get them. There's another one too, Viton, which is probably good, but silicone's better under heat. And I think Viton's probably better under KOA or sideways load. But you find an online calculator for silicone O-rings and buy the right ones and make the slots the right way. There's probably, I think I did a video about it, but that's the ultimate way to do it, I think. Anyway, I'm going to call this a night. Thanks everyone. Take care. Be kind to each other, especially to me, and more soon.